call the Rockford Area Schools Independent School District 883 Board of Education regular meeting to order at 6:30 p.m. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, and board roll call. Brady Anderson.
Here.
Jessica Johnson.
Here.
Kevin Campbell.
Here.
Eric Gordy.
Here.
Beth Preska.
Here.
Amy Edwards is here. We have a quorum. At this point in time, I'll take a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll move to approve the agenda as presented.
I have a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? Pending no further discussion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Agenda approved. Next order of business is recognition. I'll turn it over to Brenda.
Good evening, board. Welcome back. January 2020. Did you ever think we'd get to 2020? I'd like to recognize a few of our kiddos from the 3 buildings. First of all, Reams yearbook artwork. So we'd like to recognize Daniela Hernandez, whose artwork will be featured on the front of the Reams yearbook this year. The students at Reams voted for their favorite cover that was completed by students in the 4th grade. And Daniela Hernandez, her artwork was selected by her peers. So congratulations, Daniela. Rockford Middle School, Spelling Bee. Rockford Middle School Center of Environmental Studies would like to recognize Elizabeth Kartak, grade 7, the winner of this year's Spelling Bee. Second place went to Alyssa Gilman, grade 5. Both of these students worked very hard to be successful, and we are proud of their performance. Lizzie will represent Rockford in the regional Spelling Bee next month. So we wish Lizzie great success and represent. Rockford High School would like to recognize Taylor Andrews and Chance Langdon, both grade 12, for being recognized by the 2020 Minnesota Scholastic Arts Awards Board. Both Taylor and Chance received honorable mention at this year's competition, so congratulations to both Taylor and Chance. And I would say my father was an art teacher for 31 years, and to be even honorably mentioned in this competition is a big deal. This board sees thousands of pieces of art, and for our kiddos to be acknowledged and recognized, it's a big deal. So again, congratulations to Rockford. And last, Rockford Gymnastics. They are rocking and rolling. They have a meeting tomorrow night at home here at the middle school. But Rockford, our athletic department would like to recognize head coach Avery Schroed and assistant coach Emma Webster for their incredible work with the Rockford Gymnastics team. Rockford Gymnastics is making some noise, and in the gymnastics community is noticing. So great work with our coaches, the kids, the parents for supporting them. Rockford Gymnastics tomorrow night. Place to be.
Nice. Thank you. All right, next order of business is public comment, and I will read a statement as per usual. Public comment at each regular school board meeting is an opportunity for residents of the Rockford Area School District to address the school board. After being recognized by the chair, each individual will identify themselves and the group they represent, if any. To ensure that all individuals have a chance to speak, speakers will be limited to one 3-minute presentation. The public comment portion of the regular school board meeting is not a time to debate an issue, but for the board to hear comments from community members. The Minnesota Government Data Practices Act prohibits comment about specific student matters, even without naming the student, in open session. This includes a public comment portion of a school board meeting. The board respects and values input on student matters, but when it relates to a specific student or to a specific student matter, such input must be heard by the appropriate personnel, such as the building principal or superintendent, and not during an open meeting of the school board. At this time, I'll ask Kathy, do we have any notices for public comment request? All right, thank you. There are no notices for public comment requests or no requests. We'll move on to our next agenda item, which is our consent agenda. At this time, I would entertain a motion regarding our consent agenda items.
I'll make a motion that we approve our consent, of the items in our consent agenda.
I have a first. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any further comments or discussion? All right, pending no further comments or discussion, I'll call for a vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, consent agenda passes. Thank you. Next agenda item is our high student achievement section, beginning with our principal's report. Starting with our elementary school, I'll call Brenda to the podium. Happy New Year.
Same to you. Happy New Year. Am I on? I was thinking a lot about just what I would share with you tonight. And last year at this time, I spoke to you about our Start with Hello program. We worked with folks down at Sandy Hook Elementary, and as you know, my counselor used to work there, and we have quite a connection with them, and really working with our students in terms of how to make more connections in school. And as I was thinking about that, I was thinking about, the discussions we've had all year long about really moving the needle and about trying to raise student achievement. And we've talked a lot about that as a staff, and how that'll never happen if our students aren't connected at school and if they aren't building relationships with people at school. We were very fortunate to spend 4 hours on Monday with Superintendent Rhonda Dean, who came over and did emotional poverty with us. And I have had many, many comments from my staff that was one of the best professional developments we've had in a long time. And it hits right home with everything that we're working with when it comes to student connection. And so that was staff development that my staff is getting. We will be doing Start with Hello next week. We're knee deep in the Rocky Buddy program, which I reported on earlier this year. I think we have 40 students that are involved in that, and the list is growing. And it's so much fun to walk down the hall and see this Rocky Buddy with that teacher and it's happening all the time, and it's really something that's been beneficial for our kids. And I think truly the staff members are the benefactors because it's pretty fun to spend time with kids one-on-one. We celebrate Unity Day. We have our kindness project that we work on. All those things are helping kids connect in our building, and yes, the academic piece is happening. We talk about press. We talk about all those things that we're doing as well. But I can't emphasize enough, I don't think, that the relationships and that personal connection for kids has got to be first. And like we said at Emotional Poverty the other day, we invited our preschool staff to be there. I had a conversation with Tiffany Reinhardt, and I said, I think this would really be beneficial for your staff. And they were so excited to come. And we said, it starts at their level. It starts at their level. So I just want to emphasize the fact that we're working really hard on that in the elementary school. And like I said, if they're connected, if they feel valued, if they feel as though they're loved in school, then we can take them to the ends of the earth academically. So just an update on that piece, because it is super important. It's super important throughout the district, but it starts at that preschool level in our building. So that's my report tonight.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Nice.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments?
Got a quick question. Could you just give me I'm guessing the Start with Hello program is exactly what that says. Can you just give us a quick summary of the program?
Yep. Start with Hello came out of the Sandy Hook Promise. There is a group of parents that work at different levels. It's say something. If you see something, say something. Start with Hello is really an elementary program. How do you help kids be connected? I see a child and I want to be their friend, and I say hello, and now what do I say? and kids freeze up there. Friday when we had our early out, we overlapped and doubled up lunches, and there were times I had 300 students in the lunchroom at once, and they did great. And my staff was fantastic, and as they came in, we just sat, usually they sit with their classes, we just said, okay, all cold lunches sit here, you sit here, you sit here, you sit here, and some of their faces were like, I'm sitting with a whole table full of girls. Yep, you are. and even that was eye-opening to me to say, yes, this is still important. I did an observation on a teacher today, a 4th grade teacher, and they were supposed to break themselves up into 4 groups, and they had 5 groups. So she said, you go here, you go here, you go here, you go here. And even their faces were kind of like, and it just says to me, we still have work to do. And so it's that comfort level of, now I've said hello, what do I say next? And we do a little bit of development, staff development, kid development with them, and give them ideas. And so we do some icebreakers with them and give them some ideas of what you do next. And so maybe you're new on a ball team, maybe you're new somewhere and you want to make friends, but you really just aren't really sure what to say. So we try to give them the words. My counselor and I go room to room, and we do have our presentations with every class.
Great.
So yeah, we do that at the beginning of the year. This is our kind of mid-year, and we try and do that throughout the year. So, and it all feeds back to kindness. So.
Wonderful.
Connection.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Any other questions? Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. All right, next is our middle school update with Principal Becky Anderson-Hume.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Did you pull this down for me this time? So before I jump into my report, I have a treat for you all. We have 3 of our best and brightest 7th graders here to talk about the E in the CES part of our name, the environmental part, and they are here to talk about their personal connections with 3 different environmental opportunities that they have. So we have McKenna Bernard, McKenna Schultz, and Hannah Van Putty. Did I do it right? Yes. Come on up, ladies. And I'm gonna get out of their way and let them do their thing.
Hi, my name is Hannah Van-Putty. I'm in 7th grade. I'll be talking about 25-2. 25-2 is a company that provides plants from all around the world. They built us a big wooden box thing that we call the crop grape. We have one in every science classroom. It's like the size of a microwave but taller. We have been growing lettuce, tomatoes, strawberries, basil, and peppers. We have learned about bolting, root rot, tip burn, and when it's ready to harvest. The seeds come from countries around the world. The reasons that we keep connections with 25-2 is to teach the students about plants and where they come from and what they taste like. 25-2 uses artificial intelligence, genomics, optimized growing environments, 3D printed drones, and cutting-edge imaging software to offer agriculture solutions that work.
Okay, I'm here to talk about the YES program. What the students get out of the YES program is that if you like learning and helping the environment of your community, the YES program is mostly all about like helping and learning about our environment in our community. And this is a good way to spend our time because the students get a lot out of it. Like if they are interested in learning about like plants and animals and about your community and they don't really know where to start, like the YES program is a good way like for them to like start going into that. And then it's important to our school because at our school we like in agriculture we talk about like farming and agriculture. But if like maybe say one student goes to agriculture and they really like it and they want to figure out like another way how to like get involved with that, the YES program is a good way to start. Oh yeah, I'm McKenna. And one of our projects in Yes that we're working on right now is the food waste production in breakfast. Because at breakfast, for breakfast, you usually get an applesauce container, which is made out of plastic, and then a juice container, which is made out of plastic, and then you get like your main, like let's just say it's French toast for that day, but it's all wrapped in a plastic bag, so you got to get all of it. Maybe you just say like that one kid wants just applesauce in the morning. You can't do that. You have to grab all of it.
It's a huge problem.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Great
Excellent
job.
work. Thanks, Nicole.
Hi, I'm also McKenna.
Yeah.
I'll be doing Envirothon. Envirothon is a thing with dealing with different parts of the environment. There's aquatics, current events, soils, wildlife, and forestry. They all focus on certain parts of the main parts of the environment. What Envirothon is that it is a thing of where kids come normally on Fridays to study for a competition in Victoria. This is on April 30th, and they all study normally certain topics, but kids can share topics or do many topics at the same time. It is the 6th grade, 7th grade, and 8th grade that are doing this, and I find it very fun because you can go and learn new things about everything, and you can show what you know in a friendly competition.
Awesome.
Will you bring back the giant trophy to show us when you win it?
Sure.
All right.
Which school has just a ton of kids there? I remember when you guys came back last year, we were like, we're getting them. Because they had just team after team after team. I think it's Hopkins too.
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And we're like, yeah, we're
Yeah.
at
Go get 'em, girls.
Oh, yeah, put them in your sights.
Well done, ladies. Thank you very much.
Yes,
Great
please
kids.
take, yes.
Step up to
Bobby,
step up,
Bobby, get
step
up
up.
That was awesome.
Thank you also to Miss Russell, who's here tonight. And organizing for me. You can,
She does a nice job.
oh gosh, absolutely. And I told them that they could leave whenever they wanted to leave too, because it's, school night, so
Yes.
we want them. So the environmental emphasis is very important to us, right? And it's something that we try to infuse in as many things as possible, and it's, depending on where you stand on the planet, there is no denying that it's their planet when we're done here. And so to be able to teach them and to be able to extend the things that are happening in our classrooms out into different contexts, into their own individual work, I think is an amazing thing. And so and I know I say this all the time, but the staff in the middle school really allows these kids to have many, many, many opportunities. And so it's a nice mix, competition, right, freedom of choice, local things happening, broader things happening. Our partnership with 25-2 is giving us some really good extensions in learning as well, and yeah, we like that. Any questions on that part of it? Before we jump into the boring stuff?
Not boring, got handouts.
No,
See you there.
not one on the
Love
table
it.
again, I told you I would this time, but I will.
Thank you.
So we have one more round of conferences coming up, except it's going to be a double round, I think, because we ended up canceling 7th grade conferences last night. I had 2 teachers come up with influenza B, one having a different medical thing, and then, I would have had a social studies teacher there by herself, but then she got sick today, so my entire 7th grade is out with. So we're gonna try to do it, attach it on to 8th grade next week, which is our last round of conferences right now, but yeah, it's in town, so scary. We have some Bakerfield trips coming up, and then we also are doing the CDC, a federal tobacco survey. We're taking part in that, but they only wanna do one section of 6th grade, of one grade, and so we're gonna help them out Now the state kind of wants to jump in on that, but they want to include 7th and 8th graders, but it's right before MCAs, and so I'm thinking probably not, but once you get out there, they want you. So information, and I've been kind of building this for the last couple of months and preparing you folks and then preparing families. I've been using my weekly bulletin as a way to educate and get information out, and to be honest with you, I hesitated to do this, but I thought, let's go for it. I told them that I would be here today to talk to you about changing the grading system at the middle school for next year. And I have gotten 0 negative feedback. And I don't know in the superintendent's office if you're hearing anything, but, and that's really something, because there's been a lot of districts where there's a lot of pushback, and it's the same thing. It's A's are important to me. I know letter grades. What about transcripts? What about colleges? And in the middle school, we just don't have that to deal with. And if research says that standards-based grading is what to do, and we know that a different grading scale will help us give more information about what kids know and can do, then it's our responsibility to do the right thing with that. And as I've said many, many times before, our teachers are working very hard at the middle level. We started over 2 years ago, talking about grading, right, and philosophies with grading and common grading mistakes. And so from there we built on, we talked about standards. And then we talked to them about assessments, and now we're talking about how to score those things, and it all intertwines together, and it's something that you have to talk about with teachers all at the same time, and it is the most overwhelming thing for a principal to do to teachers that there is. And I want you to understand that is the work that they're doing and the work that they're going to continue to do all next year. They are redoing fundamentally everything that they're doing in a classroom, between grading and standards and assessments. Everything that they're doing will be redone. And they still, when we had a speaker out on Monday, she asked them who they are, what they did, what they're excited about, and what they're concerned about. And every one of my staff said the same thing. Super excited to do better for kids. Just I'm excited for the opportunity. And you just can't replace that. And so my promise to them is now it's time. They have to have continued support, continued great professional engagement at lower levels, because they've had the big pieces, but they need time. And so you'll see, it'll be an amazing thing. So what I have kind of just written up for you is just currently we have a grades 5 and 6 system where we have a 1 through 4 scale, and then our 7th and 8th graders use traditional A through F grading. Our proposal is to change everyone, all grades 5, 6, 7, 8, to a 0 to 8 grading system. And the reason 0 to 8, and again, because we don't believe 1 through 4 gives parents, and more importantly kids, enough information about where they are in terms of a skill, right, or in terms of a performance. If we can get more information to them, extend the grading, and then move away from traditional letter-based grading and focus on standards for our 7th and 8th graders in a system that they will see at the high school and IB. And again, that's what we do at the middle school. We prepare kids for high school. So that's our proposal. And I know you need 2 readings on this, and so this is an action item for you. Round 1, month 1. All right, I'm ready for your questions. Let me tell you too, the blue sheet is a sheet that Carol Nielsen, who was our speaker, who has worked with the high school and now with the middle school. This is one of my favorite items, and I think this does a very nice job of explaining the 0 to 8 grading system. The qualifiers across the top, if a teacher wants to improve quality, for example, it shows you verbs and it shows you ideas about how to do that at each level, right? A 7 or 8 grade means a student's going to have to take the information learned in a class and extend it out into a different context at a much higher level to get that 7, 8 grade. And so that's what that means. A 0 score would mean there's really no attempt or there's no information to assess a student. And so you can kind of see, we're going to spend a lot of time talking about rubrics, building rubrics departmentally, which I think is important. And that's growing pains at the middle school still. Mm-hmm. They're used to being grade level teams, and so they're extending a little bit out in departmental level preps, working together, PLCs, all this work is being pushed out into PLCs as well. So it's another nod to Ms. Russell there, with her help with that.
Yeah, go ahead.
Thank you so much. This is so exciting. And I'm looking forward to, it's a big deal, as we expand this into the grades and connecting it kind of to other data we collect and seeing, because this is gonna give a much more rigorous, in-depth view of what our students are doing.
An
And then
honest
does that
view, yeah.
correlate to other things? And then I think it'll also then illuminate some holes and then really
Absolutely.
illuminate what we're doing good. And so I applaud you for this initiative, thank you. And just my question would be, and you don't even have to answer tonight, if you do consistently come up with some barriers, let us know how we can help. If there's anything that, as a board, we could help you with that, because there's always barriers in a new initiative.
Right.
And so, just, thank you.
I think our primary, what's on teachers' minds immediately is how Infinite Campus is gonna work with that. And I know that we use it in 5th and 6th grade, 7th and 8th grade have no experience with that, number one. Number two, their principal has only used Infinite Campus as an administrator, and so she has a lot of work to do in the next couple of weeks to learn that inside and out, to be of service to teachers. And just to make sure that we are employing everything that Infinite Campus can give us to make us successful using that product.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
Bobby, I just wanna, I mean, I've said it before, but we're so lucky that you're here.
Appreciate it.
I've heard from staff members in your building how Monday's workshop was just great for them. I truly applaud you taking the time and opportunity to actually train your teachers how to do standards-based assessments, not just aligned. And giving them the time, because with districts, it's easy to say we're standards-based, we're standards aligned, we do standards-based, but to actually give the PD to teach them and have them understand, I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
And I know I said it to you before, but I just want to say it here, that your leadership and your passion is evident, and we're lucky.
And we appreciate your support. And again, and I talked to my staff about being in a rough draft space and being comfortable with discomfort, because I work with a bunch of perfectionists, right? And they want to come out the gate being perfectly set up, and that's just not going to happen. And it's hard for them because they want to do the right thing for kids, and I get that. And it's, when you're anxious about a change anyway, and when you're working for other people's children, and you're going to slap numbers on them, you know, and so it's going to be a couple years that we're going to continue to work on this and perfect this, because it takes that kind of time. It really absolutely does. So thank you for your support on
Don't
that.
just, don't slam it in. Take your time.
Absolutely,
That's-
appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's the important thing.
Any other questions or comments?
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next update is high school principals report.
Hey, this is the last.
Rhonda.
Oh, your last time.
I just want to, I want to put
For
some
this
context on that and why it's your last time. In the consent agenda, so everyone else can see, in the consent agenda, we approved the hire of a high school principal.
That is true, and thank you for that. I'm starting to take on water just a little bit. No. Sorry for that. So the high school principal report, little shallow this month, I'll say that, because our heavy lift at the high school right now is IB. And so Matthew will be up short, Dr. Scheidler will be up shortly to talk a little bit about IB. But just a couple things that I'd like to highlight. Last December, I brought up the new initiative with having a homework help on Wednesday afternoon. And at that time, we'd only had 2, and it was exploding, but of course it was, towards the natural break in the calendar, winter break. But since that time, we've continued to have high numbers. As an overview, we've had 5 sessions. The numbers have been, and this is the number of students staying after for an hour to an hour and a half after school until well after 4 o'clock. 48 kids the first night, 32 kids the second night. When we came back in January, it was 26 kids that first Wednesday back, 60 kids last week, and we just had another 27 kids today. So the numbers are continuing to hold. Of course, that 60 kids that we had on January 15th was the day before finals. So, yes. But the other thing that we are finding that has been beneficial about the homework help is that, let me back up a second. One of the things that we focused on in terms of a building this year was common syllabi, and I think I shared that with you several months ago. One of the components of the common syllabi is that we want a relearning option for kids. So if they don't learn it in the time frame that we, adults, teachers, say things should be learned, I mean, kids learn at different paces. Sometimes kids are just off their game on that summative assessment. But to not make that a deal breaker for our kids, we're giving them time, and it is best practice to allow kids that opportunity to demonstrate what they know. And so some of the numbers in our homework help attendance is also kids who are coming in and doing some retake and some relearning. We've had math teachers in there consistently, English teachers in there consistently. We've had someone from special services, our special ed department, in there consistently every week. And so it's turned out to be one of those things that if you build it, they will come. And we built it and they're coming.
Do you know if it's underclassmen or upperclassmen? Who's coming?
It's a mix. Thank you for asking that. I didn't have that data sorted since just last week, because last week was kind of a short week, and then with professional development this week. But we do have those numbers because we do ask kids to sign in, mostly ninth graders. Probably ninth is the most, then sophomore, juniors, and then seniors. But still, we have several seniors every week that are showing up. And for some kids, yeah, it is getting help, but for other students, they just need that place to study. Because when they get home, the space is not conducive. And if we can provide that place, and it's a safe place, and hoping to get some snacks for kids, because it tends to be a long day for some of our kids, especially if they eat the first lunch. So it's a work in progress, but again, if we build it, they will come, and they're coming. So we're excited about it.
And during that time, is it kind of a collaborative kind of environment, or are people kind of individually working?
It's very collaborative. Actually, the gals who are organizing it, which is our Educator Rising advisors, it started with them. They'll put name tags, if you will, on the different tables: English, math, social studies. And so the kids can cluster themselves by department, or you'll see kids working off to the side just in a group, working on their projects at the computers. So it's a variety of different things.
So cool.
Yeah. Good.
I have a question. Yep.
Yes, Beth?
It's
Ms.
two-part. How is
Director
it
Pratt.
funded and staffed?
Well, it's funded. How is it funded? Well, the three advisors who started this initiative, like I said, there were three advisors who are the advisors for our Educators Rising Club. And Educators Rising is a club that's targeting kids who want to be teachers, who want to be trainers. That's kind of their niche. And so it's really helping to cultivate kids to get into this profession. This is the greatest profession ever. But those three individuals are actually being paid a stipend because they're advisors for a club. So there's no additional expense for that. We have been working with Matthew with the IB budget because we do have some kids in there, again, mostly ninth graders. And so because we're implementing the MYP curriculum, we're able to support those kids with a little bit of funding through the IB grant.
Thank you.
That's a good question. Thank you for that.
Any other questions?
So the other thing that I'd like to highlight this week, was there another question, Amy? I'm
No, I was
sorry.
just waiting for you
Oh.
to get to this one too. I'm curious.
So another, something else I wanted to highlight this week is we are having an International Cuisine Week with guest chefs. Again, this is in line with our IB, our global perspective, celebrating different cultures. So each day this week, we've had a different specialty menu item. Yesterday, it was Native American menu item with wild rice burgers, Indian fry bread. It was so good. And our guest chef was our very own Dan Pratt, who was back behind the line serving it up. Today, the focus was Germany. And so the menu was from Germany with, the German potato salad and the currywurst, the braised red cabbage, and our guest chef was Dr. Scheidler.
Uh-huh.
And then tomorrow it is Mexican, and the entrees are, tacos, refried beans, and the guest chef is Angel Swanson, who speaks Spanish, and she works in our main office. And then on Friday, it's Italy, and Chef Harlan, that's his heritage, and so the menu that day will be, ravioli and Parmesan broccoli, and just, so again, exposing our kids to different cuisine. Talked to a few kids in the lunchroom, and they just kind of like to switch it up. So they're really appreciating the option to try something different. But I tell you, the fried bread, we could put that on the menu every day, and the kids will pick it. They were loving it up. And it's interesting, when you talk to Native American families, they all have their own recipe. And they all think that their recipe is the best. So, just one other comment that was not on the board agenda because of the timeliness of the early dismissal. Just like one of my colleagues mentioned, our teachers, our staff just really stepped up on Friday with the early dismissal. For us, it was the second day of finals, and the kids just rolled with it. They were not able to complete that last final on Friday before we dismissed early. And so we came back on Tuesday, even though it was a late start day, we adjusted our schedule. They took that final then, and we just kept it moving. The kids were very, they just made it work. And so did the staff. I mean, and really the staff just, they made it work for us. And I'll talk a little bit more when I sit down there towards the end of the meeting to talk about, K-12 district-wide, how we were able to manage that. So that's my report.
And I'll just add one more thing. As a parent of a high school student, it was really nice to have a couple different ways that the adjusted final schedule was going to be happening. So I think it was pushed out on Facebook. I think it was pushed out in an email, variety of different ways, because I know for some of the kids that had been studying, that was their biggest question of like, what does this mean? And do I have to do my finals in a shorter period of time, or is something going to be a different day and all of that? And just having that information almost, it was slightly after the announcement came out, really reduced some of the stress. I felt with some of the kids that I interact with. So just thanks for the two-pronged approach with, school's closing early, and we know that this is affecting, you differently because we're happen to be in finals. So I'll just give that feedback as a really nice, and I know it took the whole team to pull that together. So thank you.
And we do try to, thank you for that. We do try to troubleshoot, of course, triage. But even on Tuesday, even though there was thoughtful consideration about the schedule, we had OJT kids leaving at a different time, and so I was like, oh yeah, that's right, we got to figure them out. But we figured them out, and it was fine. Didn't want to hold them hostage or make them miss a day of work because our schedule. So we were able to make it work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That's wonderful.
All right. Next agenda item is our update from our IB program administrator, Matthew Scheidler. Oh, wait a minute. No, just kidding. Sorry, Skip. Sorry. Moving back. How about we'll do this? Our Director of Teaching and Learning report.
I'm the warm-up act. No, it'll work out. Don't worry, Matthew. I'll set you up.
I'll try. I'll call next again.
Thank you. All right. Coming off a very busy week, to say the least. I'll get to that in a minute here. But starting off with district assessments, it is testing season. We can tell we had over 70 proctors trained on Tuesday. It's a lot of proctors, and it's a little bit more than we've done in the past. That has to do with some of the planning and prep that we're doing for our MCA testing. 70 proctors is a lot. We spread it out across the 3 buildings, and that training went very well. We kind of got everybody on the same page this year, and so I'm looking forward to seeing how that kind of works out for us. Map testing is moving along at RMSCES, and then there's a new tool
called Sabres. It's actually not a new tool. We've had access to it for a while. But we started our first pilots program looking at while our proctors, third and fourth grade proctors were being trained, the K2 elementary teachers took a look at Sabres. Sabres is a social emotional kind of a checklist for some of our kids that will give us another data point as we kind of go through. No extra expense. It's already a part of our FAST suite of tools, and so we decided to take a look at that. And so we'll kind of do a little analysis and get some feedback from our teachers on how that worked out. And we got the first bit from our first grade staff, and we're waiting for the other two groups to come back. And I'll give you some updates on that as that kind of goes through. Like I said, this has been a very busy week regarding PD. Monday, I think it's kind of coming full circle in that kind of what we've asked. We sent Rhonda to training before. Now she's become the trainer. Train the trainer models is kind of coming full circle. We've had this opportunity to work with these IB schools around the state, and I got to pull in one of my former middle school teachers, and she presented at the middle school, and we had her also stop by the high school and work with some of our high school teachers along with some of our IB help as we kind of moved through the week. It was a very good training session on Monday. Looking at where we're moving from there, though, it makes a lot of sense to look at that train the trainer model, but at the same time we still have to send some of our people out. When we talk about investing in our kids through our own PD, I really think it paid off this week. As I saw and I got the feedback from the teachers, it was a good week. So we continue with that science implementation across the district. Focus right now is on the middle school. We're working with those 4 middle school teachers to kind of get them up to speed. The arts department had an opportunity on Tuesday, I believe it was, 2-hour late start, to get together across the district and really have 2 hours to sit down and talk with each other. I got some nice feedback from Darren regarding what they're talking about. I'll come back to that MTSS position update. We have a North Star update from Reams. Remember, we talked about that a lot last year. We had the opportunity. The state itself has flipped its own model. I think they came to the decision that what they were doing, they were bringing a lot of people into MDE for training, and it just wasn't going anywhere. Although, I gotta say that Reams was doing a very good job using that model. We did a lot of good upfront work last year that we were able to turn around and take some perception data from the teachers to set up some of the March 2nd late start PD that's going to happen with our regional centers of excellence. So we've made some connections there. We've had 3 of the trainers from the regional centers of excellence come in, and we're going to talk EL in the mainstream classrooms. And so that's coming up for March 2nd. The staff development committee, the union sent me names right before break. We're going to pull them together on Monday, and we got caught up in some IB work. So that is coming. We'll get to that one. A&I, there is an A&I program update that's due to the state on March 15th. I will give you kind of a heads up that that's coming out at the next board meeting. I'll give you that first read through that. It's going to look a lot like the last one, because what we got to do is we really do need to, if we're going to do some strategic planning, we need to align what we're doing in A&I with that strategic plan. So I had an opportunity to talk to our representative at the state of Minnesota, and she said we've actually got until April 2021 to create that next plan. I said, okay, that's good. We've got a lot of planning to do, and those pieces should align. They really should align. And so we'll talk more about that next month as we get to that, but I wanted to give you that heads up. The MTSS position, I know we've been talking a lot about that. I got word early this week that the union voted and approved to move forward with that position. I had an opportunity to talk to Rhonda today, and so we're going to talk a little bit more through how we want to approach that. And so, well, that's good. That's kind of where we wanted to be, and so we'll continue to move forward with that. Data technology integrationist position, again, bringing that team of people together for staff development this week. It was so nice to have someone to bounce ideas off of and work with them. Kevin has been working on MCA tech training with special ed and EL teachers across the district here. He actually attended that Sourcewell, the former TIES conference, and presented a poster presentation. There, you can do big presentations and small presentations. He did this thing on Canva, which is a poster creation tool, which actually cut the cost of sending him to this presentation. One of the things I encouraged him to do is to make sure that you get out and present at these also. And he took me up on it, so I had to send him. Teaching and learning, we did work a lot on that MCA Proctor training, and he did a nice job of kind of putting together some of those presentations. He's out there doing a lot of custom tech training across the district. He's doing a lot of lunch and learns. He keeps a log. If you ever want to see really what he's into, it's the amount of tech training that's kind of gone out this year is far surpassed what we've been able to do. Obviously, what I saw from last year compared to this year is just, it's phenomenal. So, and he will be working on the MAP winter test data and tech support for our new teachers. We've got some plans. Speaking of Infinite Campus, we saw that announcement today. There's some new tools. We're talking about how can we get our new teachers and our incoming teachers, our teachers that kind of show up mid-year, up and running with some online training around Infinite Campus and around some of those other tools. So we are on top of that also.
Great, thank you. Any questions? Okay. No questions. Wow.
Thanks.
Thanks for the update.
You're welcome.
Lots going on, clearly. All right, try this again. Our next agenda item is our IB Program Administrator, Matthew Scheindler. Looks like you've done that one before tonight.
Yes, yes. Good evening, everyone. I would like us to start just at point one, DP and CP site visit. We just finished this yesterday, so it took place Monday and Tuesday. Our teachers showed tremendous flexibility, engagement. We met with all of our, in the DP world, the teachers are they're organized by groups. So group one is language and literature, group two is language acquisition, so on and so forth. So we met with all 6 groups on Monday for 45 minutes right here. So the meeting started, and this is what our our DP and CP consultant was phenomenal. She was keenly aware of what we're doing and also very forthcoming with what our next steps are, concrete next steps. So we're very gracious for that. We'll be looking for a report from them, from Rachel Moyer coming soon. Our IB Advisory Committee, we met today. We focused on our assessment policy, and I just had sent out a Google form to our staff. We've got about 66% completion rate. We want to get a little closer to 100% before we really start crunching that data. And we're looking at March 2nd. March 2nd is our last 2-hour late start, and it's our last chance to really bring our staff together. And we're really excited to talk about our different policies that we've worked on this year. Not only the assessment policy, the inclusion policy, the language policy, those are things we'll work on March 2nd. Professional development, we had our Wednesday IB workshop, vertical articulation. So that was our department's meeting along with their special education representative. So we're being very intentional from January to June. All of our IB workshops will be organized either vertically, so say the individuals and societies department, 9, 10, 11, 12, and their SPED representative, or horizontally, and that's grade level. So we're being, and we've got a lot of work to do in both of those arenas, so that's how we're organizing that work. Communication and feedback opportunities. Right before winter break, which was after our last meeting, we actually recorded 2 podcasts. One was an interview with Ben Pennings, and another was with an IB alum and her mother. And they're both featured on the MNIB Matter or IB Matters podcast home site, and you can head to there and listen to it. I heard from, and we even had some students come and be in the audience, and they were asking questions. And so it was a nice interactive opportunity. And the nice thing about those podcasts, you can listen to them anytime, you can rewind, you can pause. What that IB parent and IB alum can provide is something we don't have. We've had 0 folks go through IB in Rockford. Nobody's done it. We've had a handful of teachers that have some experience teaching in IB schools, but not here. And so to hear, I'll give you one common question or comment I hear from folks, I'll actually call it a myth, is that, well, if I want to be a full diploma student, I can't play sports. I got to drop everything. It's not true. The young lady that was here, she went to Robbinsdale Cooper School. It's at least 4 times bigger than us. She was a 3-year captain in lacrosse. She played 3 sports. So did her sister. I mean, they are still able to have a full, well-rounded experience.
She had a diploma?
One, the young lady that was with us got the certificate.
Okay.
So that means she assessed in 3 of the 6. Her sister got the diploma. So if folks tell you got to give up your social life and your academic life, what our consultant said is the average, in her work with folks, the average, and in their school, they have 200 students pursuing full diploma. They have a school of 1,600, 200 students pursue the full diploma, 58% actually earn it. And the thing is, even if you don't get it, you're still, that rigor, that process, that collaboration, you're still gaining, and you're preparing yourself for those next stages of life. So our consultant could speak to that. And I forgot to mention this, on Tuesday was our 2-hour late start, and that we actually went back in time to first semester during lunch period. Students came in on their lunch break to talk with our consultant. And she said that's always her highlight when she gets a chance to interact with kids. So that was our student work there. And then Northwest Suburban and Magnet Schools grant coordination, what was really nice, Randy Cook, our grant coordinator, sat in on every meeting, Monday and Tuesday. He was here all day, both days. Melissa Jordan, the executive director of Northwest Suburban, was here for half the day on Tuesday. And small world, when Melissa Jordan went to training in Florida, guess who her trainer was? Our consultant. It's a small world, so that worked out really well. And then the last part tonight are the board requests, and I don't know if you want me to project, or I know you received all of the documents. I just want to go through them and give a little bit of an overview, and then move on from there. I don't know if you want to see them visually here, or?
I got them right here.
I have
Okay.
to go to the
Yeah.
I need to see them.
So the first one I'd like to talk about is the budget, and that is for this fiscal year. Remember, the fiscal year for the grant runs from October 1st of 2019 to September 30th of 2020. And we met Principal/Superintendent Dean, DTL Keller, and myself. We are the IB admin team at the high school. We met, we took your request from the last board meeting, and this is what we came up with. So we created categories. These are the categories from our grant. And I just want to give a little bit of context here. When you see personnel, that's the largest number. That's for staff. So whether that's our TAC Pro, whether that's for me as the IB program administrator, we had clerical staff coming out of that for a little bit. We also pay, when our staff go to workshops and they get paid their curriculum rate, it comes out of this. If they go to the IB Academy, it comes out of that pot. So we've really, really tried to support our teachers because they need a lot of different flexibility, a lot of different ways to access training. So Dr. Anderson-Hume talked about Carol Nielsen. Carol Nielsen led our IB Academies last summer and did a wonderful job, and actually was here working with staff one-to-one in small groups on the afternoon of our professional development day when it's teacher work time. They could stop in for consultation. Professional development, that's 14%. That represents when we go out of state, the travel costs, the registration costs. Supplies for technology, that's in this year we paid for 175 Chromebooks for our carts that are in our 9th grade core classes. That's also gone to presentation stations, or those large flat screens, and this also includes the money we'll be spending this summer for the next round of Chromebooks and presentation stations in the 10th grade core classes as we move up the ladder. Instructional supplies, that's what we work quite closely, Kevin Keller and myself. This is when folks are looking at their curriculum. I'll give you an example. Next year, well, remember we talked about the registration guide. We have chemistry in 9th grade, we have chemistry in 10th grade. We gotta get some more books. And because in 10th grade, that will be MYP chemistry for the first time. So, and it's not just books, it's any resources that we can access to help our kids. And we're reaching out to other MNIB schools. What are you using? Whether it's online resources, whether it's free resources, anything we can explore, that's what we're looking at.
So
Yes,
with the
sir.
technology purchases, so we did 9th grade, now we're gonna do 10th grade as this progresses year to year. Are you gonna do a grade level per year?
Mhm.
Is there a benefit to waiting to go year to year, or just buy it all in bulk? Just be done for the entire school. We talk about IB for all, right? So, and then how the kids in our current building can still get benefit, right? So is it not allowed, or is it not
Well, I'm
worthwhile?
leaning on the grant narrative as it was
Yeah.
presented to the federal
Yeah.
government in 2017, and that's how it was laid out year by
Year to year? Okay, good.
And then
Very good.
also, as
Just wondering.
I don't know the official term of usage rate or a 3-year lifespan, being able to go through a full life cycle and then gear up right at the end of the grant, because we can't carry any money over after year 5, getting a whole new slew of.
So the grant timelines are in pretty good shape, we're saying.
Yes, that's what
Very
they
good.
were
Very
built
good.
around.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then just one more clarification, because that's a similar question to what I had. So then as we think about future budgeting for, sustainment, what we'll need to think about is like 175 Chromebooks a year, right? Because if you think about a 4-year life cycle, is that kind of what we would potentially, once the
Well,
grant
and
runs out?
that number could vary, because see, when you go carts of computers, you actually have to buy a lot more than the kids you have. We have 125 freshmen.
Right.
We had to buy 175 computers. And that kind of goes to a master scheduling piece.
Okay.
We can look at the average number of students in a class, it might be 25. But if we look at the real numbers, I'll just use Mr. Nichols, 9th grade, Lang and Lit. He might have 21, 22, 24, 27, 36. Guess what? We have to buy 36 Chromebooks for that cart. So even though, so we have 50 more Chromebooks. Now if you extrapolate that out, you're talking about 100 extra Chromebooks that aren't, and that's just in those core classes. So
Got it.
that's why as we look at, the way it was written was 9th grade, and what we adjusted last spring with Superintendent Duran, and this is when at that point Principal Dean and Technology Director Engel and Kevin Keller, looking at the CART model for 9th grade, and then eventually looking at laptops down the road for our students.
Okay. Got it. So the grant is written for carts, but future consideration for long-term planning might.
Would be like 1-to-1.
Okay, that's helpful.
Mhm.
Thanks. Yep.
Okay, and then the last sliver, that 4% promotional supplies, that is for some of our contracts with Media Minefield or things like that are helping promote, or when we go to IntegraPrint, when you look at the film outside our office, that covering, and I forgot, IB contracts is 3%. Those are the contracts we have to pay to be a candidate school. Okay? The next item I'd like to look at is the MYP training. You can see from that bar chart, we've had 25 folks trained. That's great. 25 folks have attended Category 1 training. We have one staff member that was hired in late August that has not gone to train yet. When we get to the point of submitting our application for authorization, that would be, we'd want to have I should say it this way. The expectation is that at least one person has been trained in each subject. Well, we've already gone way beyond that, so we're in great shape on the MYP. Admin, we still have some folks that have to attend some trainings. I'll jump to DP. You can see the numbers are a little lower. The rationale, we really invested heavily in MYP on the front end because we're starting with MYP. We're doing MYP right now. And we've had several folks go this fall and into this winter, and we'll have more people going to DP training. We got clarification from our consultant about exactly, as we say, this is our pathway, and these are the folks and which trainings they have to go to. So that was very helpful. Same thing for administrators and coordination training. We got clarification on that. CP, you can see that's pretty flat. Right now, the only person that's gone to admin training is our board member Johnson. So we are working on that. I actually started an online course February 5th for my CP coordination training, and Mr. Keller is going to Boston in February. So that's what we're working on. The next item I'd like us to look at is the IB action progress. So I want to start with the key right at the top. It's entitled 1/16/20 IB Action Plan Progress. I'd like to explain the colors and what this means. The green means either we've planned for it, we have information, if we collected data, we have enough to address this objective on our application for authorization. We have enough. That does not mean it's fully implemented at Rockford High School. Okay? The application for authorization is our next step. When our consultant was here, she was referencing an April 1st submission date. We don't have to submit. I've actually changed that to July 1st. And I changed that, we can have a July 1st submission and we can still have a fall authorization visit. And so what that does is give us, because our teachers are stressed. And when we submit for application for authorization, it's not just for MYP, it's for MYP, DP, and CP. And I'll use Mr. Nichols again, I'll use one teacher. If you are teaching MYP, we need your unit plans, for at least one from each department. If you're going to be teaching a CP class, we need your course guide. That's a lot of work, folks. If you're teaching a CP class, we need your course guide. Extended essay, we need timelines. So we have a lot of logistics, a lot of work to do. What our consultant said many times is your teachers are asking the right questions. They care about this. They're engaged. And I'm not going to lie to you, we had some very direct conversations, courageous conversations. People want the best for our kids. It really stood out, and our consultant could absolutely see that.
Just to
Yes.
interrupt on the change from April to July, did you say?
Mm-hmm.
Remind me what happens if you submit and you don't get it?
I'm sorry.
So you're ready to go. You said their recommendation was April. You changed it to July because teachers.
Because we had a lot of work to do.
Okay.
And I don't want to stress out our staff.
What happens on July? What do you submit everything, right? And then what happens?
So it's similar to what happened, and I'm going to give you my understanding
Yeah.
as I know now. I don't know everything. It's similar to when we submitted for candidacy, which was remember spring break when we're calling him Miss Edwards for the John Hancock? They got back to us within 2 weeks and said, you're approved for the next step. We were approved for candidacy at that point. So what I've been told is that you submit your materials, and there's a lot more uploads we have to do, because when we were submitting for candidacy, we hadn't done anything yet. We were just giving our background information or what we plan to do professional development wise. Now, if you think about it, with MYP, we're going to have a whole year under our belt of unit writing, delivering units. So we have a lot more uploads to do, a lot more work on this submission.
So you're approved, right? You submit, 2 weeks later they tell you you're approved.
Then they'll say, we'd like you to send us 3 dates for our authorization visit.
So like 6.
Do they have the option of saying not yet?
They could.
What happens if we're in July and they say not yet versus being April and they say not yet?
We'll find that out. I can't answer that right now.
Okay, but
That's my only concern pushing it. I get the stress piece, and I hear it a ton. I understand it a ton. I get what we're asking teachers. I just go, if we get to July and they say not yet, does that delay? What are the consequences if they say that?
Well, here's where I had a conversation with Carol Nielsen, and this is what they did when they became authorized. They actually went through registration with asterisks in the registration guide saying, because they had not been authorized yet. When they did registration that February, they found out that April or May.
Okay.
Does that make sense? So we could do the same thing, and one thing, and I'll make sure this is all acceptable, but one thing that when we talk about our registration guide, you saw a lot of those courses were CIS and IB. So if we don't have IB yet, we still have the CIS or the AP. But I'm gonna push back. We're asking a lot of our staff, and April 1st is really quick. It's 2 months away.
So do you see there being a risk in July, but it's worth it, or do you see there's not really a risk?
I don't know that I can answer that right now. I mean, I don't know what you mean by risk.
Well, it's just on the spot that's what I don't know what the risk either. If they say you're not yet approved, what happens, right? Versus that, if they say that in July, are we ready to go in fall anyway? Versus if they say that in April, that's what I'm concerned about. What work needs to happen after we submit?
Well, I guess you're asking me to say what would we be insufficient on. I can't predict that.
No.
But what I'm trying to say is April 1st, there's a lot of work that has to get done. Extended essay timeline, reflective project timeline, personal project timeline. And we need to collaborate. It can't just be one or two people stating all those things. That's a collaborative process.
Mm-hmm.
Do you mind if I help restate
No,
the question?
go ahead.
Okay, so I think what Kevin's asking is from a school year, impact to a school year, right? So in our heads, what goes on in our heads is, hey, if we don't make it in April, even though we're not ready. So that's not, I don't think that's the pushback.
Yeah, I'm not saying we have to do it.
No, I think his question is, let's say we thought we were ready. We did this process in April. The IB people said, you're not ready. You've got to correct these things that we found in your application prior to the fall. So now we're having that application submitted in July. I think he's wondering, hey, so we think we're going to be ready in July and we're going to submit this and we're going to feel good about it and we feel like it's the right timeline, but what if they said, ooh, you're not ready? Does that impact the students coming in the fall? I think that's the question, right? Or all of that, or is it more of a moving timeline and it actually doesn't really matter?
Let's make sure the year. Right. So we're talking
okay.
Next school year. It's the 2021 school year.
Yeah.
We're targeting. We want to have our visit in November of 2020.
Okay.
If we had the visit in February of 2021, we still, and I gave you that Fridley model, we could still register and have the caveat there, we're hoping that we're approved IB. But especially with COSI, it actually gives you a two-way go. But I'm gonna say, just saying it, let's shoot for April, those are just words. That has nothing to do with the emotions, the investment, the work that has to be done. And I'm telling you, it's an incredible amount.
No, and I don't think that that's at all what Kevin or myself are alluding. Nothing about that. I think the question is, with moving back 3 months, is there any risk to our total implementation by moving that date back by 3 months? Does that push it to the end of a deadline, and now if we don't make it, we don't get to apply? And what I'm hearing, I don't think it does, but I don't think that's what we're just making sure. Just pushing it back to July have any potential unintended consequences if we're not ready at that point in time?
I mean, if we're not ready in July.
Yep.
Now, keep in mind that would give us, instead of a 2-month window, a 5-month window to get everything prepared, that for 3 different programs. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's the way I look at that. We have that much more time, plus June when people are not in classrooms, and you're not pulling people from classrooms.
Yeah. Totally not questioning the judgment to move that back. That's not it. I think the question is if in April, if we did it in April, May, June, July, whatever month, if a deficiency is found, then what happens next? Do we have to wait another 3 months to reapply, or
I don't know that answer.
Okay, all right. So that just might be maybe a follow-up then of that. Does that kind of make sense? Because totally get it from a workload and all of the rigor that needs to happen in order to submit the application. I think we're just trying to understand and wrap our heads around, hey, that makes sense from the volume. Is there any risk to the program by moving the deadline back? The application.
And it might be completely my thing. Can I just get clarity on this one question? So, because I think we're still what is our goal date? Like, we're submitting, when is our goal date that we want them to go, yeah, you're ready, you're ready to go? Is it fall, this next fall?
Goal date, you mean the authorization visit?
Yep.
November of 2020.
Okay. And then, so they'd authorize us, and when could we take the asterisks off when would we be
That's a good question. So what I've been told on this is when they come in, no school is 100% ready. And let's face it, we have a huge lift for 3 different programs that this district has 0 experience with.
Yeah.
We're going to do our best.
Yeah.
We're going to do everything we can to reach that threshold. What they often will say is operate or proceed as if you're going to be authorized.
Okay.
But they will have items, they'll have commendations, recommendations, and areas that they flag that have to be addressed.
Gotcha. So we're not hurting ourselves by going, hey, now we only have 2 months to get it right, where if we were earlier, we'd have 5 months to get it right.
But like when you say earlier, there's a human cost to that.
I'm not.
I can't.
Stop talking. I mean, I'm not talking about the
Okay,
human
but I can't
cost.
just.
I get it.
Just
And I'm not
that.
asking you to change the date. I'm just saying, as we look at it, if we look at our target goal, and now we know the things that have to change on there, we don't lose anything by not being ready to go with the 2020 school year. Right? That's what you're telling us?
Can you restate that? I couldn't follow it.
That's all right.
Do we have enough time to implement the corrective action prior to the next opportunity for certification?
Yeah, that's what my whole thing was about.
Right.
And
Do we have enough time to implement corrective action when they say you're not ready?
When they say it after November,
No.
July.
July.
I don't know that answer.
Well,
Well,
okay, very good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Jessica.
When I went to training in October, this isn't even working, so, I'll use my teacher voice. So when I went to training in October, they made a very big point of talking about authorization, and that if we do not get authorized by the end of 2020, there are a lot of requirements that are going to change in the IB world that will change what we have to do to be authorized. So that 2020 deadline is extremely important from what they expressed in our training, that if you want to be authorized for IB before all of these new all these new things, these new requirements, you need to do it by the end of 2020. So that was made very clear to us.
Was that dependent on when you started your candidacy?
No, it was all about
Are you sure about that?
positive. It was all about authorization because they made that very clear in our training. Who's looking to be authorized by the end of 2020? Okay, this is very important because anybody who wants to be authorized beyond 2020, you are going to have new things that you are going to have to do. A lot of different things, more requirements and stuff. So it was made very clear to us.
And you're absolutely sure about the start date? Because that's not what I've heard. I'll double check on that.
That was just something they were super clear about.
I understand about the ending date, but when it's when you start your candidacy.
No, it was the authorization.
Well, I will check on that.
Great. Just one thing, Matthew, I've heard you say that, it's a lot on the teachers and we've all acknowledged that. And I just don't want to have this come back in June and still say we're not ready yet. So what I'm asking is there some kind of timeline? Or I am definitely a project-oriented person. I want to know the end date so the teachers kind of know what they need to do to get there. So that we know in June we're ready for this July. Like, I want to make sure that everyone has their action steps and knows what to do so that if we put it off to July, we are ready to go.
Yeah, I think that would be absolutely. We just finished our site visit yesterday. I'd been home, I've slept, I got to kiss Penelope goodnight. So no, I have not shared that with our staff. I'm meeting with you tonight, so I won't get to see Penelope tonight. But yes, that will be absolutely clear.
Okay, that's because I just don't want to have this conversation in June, and I get it, it's a lot of work. But if we're going to put it off to July, we have to have all our ducks in a row, seriously.
Yes, I have very high standards and expectations of myself.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick?
I want to say one thing. Okay, go ahead.
Time.
Go ahead.
It's my turn. CP was a late add to the whole thing. is there a reason we have to do all three at the same time, or could we go with the two that we started with as early as we had and allow our CP certification to go to another year? I mean, to lighten the load by a third? I mean, because honestly, if we're just talking about a cost to have more visits, a problem that can be solved with money is an expense. It's not a problem. So
I'm not
can
familiar
we?
with the cost of more visits. Where did
So
that come from?
I would like you to answer my question. Is it more prudent to think about removing CP from our application at this time, given the great amount of work that you're saying that we have to do, and just go with MYP and DP, and then hit CP as we're able to go forward?
A version of that question was asked of our consultant yesterday.
Yeah.
And her answer was, we're actually, from our staff and from me, we're actually farther along and really ready for CP. So that came right from our consultant.
Okay.
So that would be.
I'm just trying to figure out how, I mean, if we're saying it's a hill to climb, is there a way we can do this the right way to make sure that we hit maybe our April or our June or whatever, so we don't have corrective action for 3 levels and maybe it's just 1 or 2?
I hear what you're saying.
Very good.
But I'm telling you what our
It's your
consultant
guys,
said.
you have to tell us what's right or wrong, so.
I'm just
Okay.
telling you exactly what our consultant said to that, nearly that identical question.
Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
I have a question related to,
He has.
That's good. I just want to
finish
go
this,
back
and I'll call on you.
because I think it's really important. My question, I want you to hear this, and I want the staff to hear and administration to hear too. My question is not to question what's happening in IB. It's really about getting clarity and understanding. So when I say, when I was asking about the April to the June time, it was because I would hear things like, we have to be here on the spot, and I don't know that. So I'm looking to you as a person in charge of it to go, yes, these are the possible consequences, or these are not, and I think we have to do this no matter what because. And that's what I was looking for. I want to come really collaborative, and I know it's a big push. I know we're asking you to do some big things in that, but I want to feel like an ally in the IB stuff and see clarity, and that's really the spot I'm coming from.
I appreciate that, and I understand the clarity part. I understand change is hard. It's hard for everyone. People have questions. People have concerns. That everyone wants it to be really good, right?
Yeah.
I believe by moving that date to where it is in that July one, that gives us a tremendous amount of time to make sure our applications for authorizations are as well prepared, complete, fully. I mean, we have a lot of documents that we have to work in. Think about it, yesterday was the first time our staff got to meet. The last 2 days was the only time they got to work with our consultant. And it is a huge lift.
And that's what's needed.
Thank you for adding that additional clarity, Kevin, and thank you. All right, Brady, did you have a question?
a little bit more tactical. The question is, I'm just processing July, right, and a lot of work needing to be done, and contracts. Aren't like staff, teachers that you need doing this work gone for the summer?
No.
No.
Last year we had half of our teachers come in and participate in IB Academy. People go to train, teachers are never really off.
Right, of course, yeah.
So
Yeah, I
that
get
personnel, that 32%, that's where there's resources available. So if we want to pull a counselor or 3 teachers or a department together and work on the extended essay, we can do that, and we're not pulling people out of class.
Yep.
Awesome.
Great.
Perfect. Thank you.
Brady, did you have a follow-up?
Nope.
Cool. Thank you for walking that through with us.
Yes.
Was there anything else, Matthew, that you wanted to make sure that you highlighted with us? I think I'm just gonna say, I really appreciate all of the effort that you put together, like to share this plan and to help. This is complex, and I think the board is trying to figure out how we can be most supportive, understand the work that needs to be to happen, as well as if there's any risks that we need to help and partner with you to mitigate. And that's that. So this is super helpful to kind of reground us in where we're at. So thank you. I know it took time and effort to map this all out, and it's definitely, from my opinion, appreciated. So thank you.
I appreciate you saying that.
Great. All right, next. Call upon our activities director report. Dan Pratt.
Good evening.
Hello.
Chef Dan.
Good evening.
Chef
Chef Dan.
Yes.
Chef
Am I good?
Dan, you're good.
All right. I'm just going to go through, I gave you a list of stuff, and I'm just going to do just a quick highlight of a few things. First off, I just want to recognize Jim Lure and the custodian staff for the great, our venue always looks so nice. I can't tell you how many times I'm at a game or a gymnastic meet and people say, this place is so clean, it's so nice. They do a heck of a job, and they can do what they do with a smile. They never seem to complain about it, so I just want to recognize them. We have 2 girls that are playing hockey in the Delano Rockford team, and our season passes work at the hockey games. So we let the kids know if they go with their, they can't just walk in and say, I have a pass, like here. They have to actually have the pass, so they do work. Right now, Marty Johnson, the girls' basketball team, is sitting 4th in this section, having a very good year with 0 seniors on the team. In a tough Wright County conference. There's a lot of good teams in there. Boys right now are sitting 2nd in the section. That section's kind of a 3-horse race. I think it's Blake, Minneapolis North, and Rockford. Those are the top 2 or top 3 schools. So that'll be fun to watch how that goes. Dance team is heading to sections pretty quick. We have just a few girls this year, and they're doing just one dance. They're not doing both. Not doing jazz and kick. They're just doing kick, I believe. The gymnastic program. Last year, I think we had 5 girls. We swelled to 7 near the end, and this year there's 21.
Nice.
Avery and Emma have done a heck of a job. Just give you some statistics. Jessica and I were talking. I can't find we got to work together. We got to find these records. But team gymnastics, the last 3 meets versus New London Spicer, the girls scored a 131.60, which is a big number. Against Columbia Heights, they scored a 132.450. And their best score of the year so far is against GSL with a 133.725. I think that's a record. All the girls are doing a great job, and it's so fun to see. Elena, I'll pick out Elena right now because she's sitting with her personal best of a 38.075, which sits 4th in the state right now for all around. And that's A and AA. That's not just A. So, like Superintendent Dean said, come out tomorrow night. It's really fun to watch. They're really competitive, and it's a great venue. It's a tight venue. We'll have three teams there, probably 75 gymnasts, but it's a lot of fun. Their sections start on February 13th. I still have to find a date to get the Watertown meet in. For some reason in the schedule, the schedule was completed, and the guy who does all the scheduling called and said, you got to find a date with Watertown. He said, we just couldn't put it in anywhere. So we thought we had it set up for the 30th at Waconia, and the Waconia AD called me and said, why would I have you guys here? Okay, we'll find another date. So the wrestling program, on Friday, January 31st, we will have our first home meet that we've had in 3 years. Mr. Gordy, recognized Mr. Gordy and Mr. Staria have done a heck of a job along with the community, the wrestling community here, bringing this back. We have 21 wrestlers, and I believe we cover all weight classes but 2. That's pretty impressive for having, 4 kids 2 years ago. AAA, Kaylee DeWolf and Everett Brunn went to the subsection 17 AAA banquet in Maple Lake on January 15th. Superintendent/Principal Dean went with them. They did a great job. Everett Brunn is moving on to the finals. And so he's going to represent subsection 17 in St. Cloud on January 29th. And he was able to choose the adult he wanted to go from the school. He chose Mr. Tauber. So Mr. Tauber will be going with him. Yep, you got shut out.
That hurt. That hurt.
I just want it on the record. February 5th is the second NCAA signing day. We have a handful of students. I've had 2 students that have come to me already that are going to be a part of it. We're still waiting on about 4 or 5 others to find out if they're going to take part in it. What we do is NCAA signing is really for Division I and Division II athletes. Division III, there's no signing, but we will always recognize Division III athletes if there's a Division I or II signing at the same time. So Calvin Sisk is going to be signing, though he's already signed on that day. So Andrew Bretson will be playing football at Gustavus, so he'll be signing. We're kind of waiting to see if Elena or Austin or Luke Pepin or Todd Train, you know, a bunch of other people are going to be doing anything. So we've been making announcements, and we'll find out soon enough. So hopefully on the afternoon of February 5th, we'll have our little signing party and publicize that. So any questions?
Chair Hedwitz.
Yes.
So I just want to say that I want to recognize Dan for, he does such a nice job with the signings and really makes it feel like it's a big deal. Well, and it is a big deal. When you sign Division I, Division II, Division III, those scholarships are rare. And to really make the student athlete and their family feel special, the way he sets up the gym and puts the step and repeat behind the scores table and actually has the kids, you know, get their pins ready and then they sign and invite the families, invite their friends down, their other student athletes down to be an audience. It's just, Dan, thank you for doing that for the kids and their parents. It's a big deal.
It's a big
And
deal, but it's
thank
also
you for making it a big deal.
And she made me buy the step and repeat, so it's a good thing. It's really cool. They use it for Parents' Day, so we are getting a lot of use out of it. But you know, that signing's a big deal because, and we try to invite the other athletes so they can see that this could be them if they wanted to do that. If they wanted to go on and play. It's not for everybody. I mean, playing a sport in college is tough. You know, it's really tough to maintain your academics and do that. So I tell the kids, you know, if you're going to go Division I, it's a job. Division II is a part-time job. In Division III, it's more like high school. You're going to be able to do that and compete. And that's not a shot at any one of the different levels. It's just the reality of what it is. And, you know, especially your spring sport athletes, your track athletes, your softball players, baseball players, that's all year long at college. It starts November and it doesn't end until sometimes June, middle of June. So anyway, thank you. It's a lot of fun to see the kids grow and see the eyes of the younger kids light up when they see somebody signing, especially if they know them like a friend. They go, if that clown can do it, I can do it. You know, so that's kind of a neat deal. So
That's awesome. Love it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
yeah, thanks.
No questions. All right, moving right along, our next agenda item is resolution directing administration to make recommendations for reductions in programs and positions. This is a standard agenda item that we do every January, so it's not, doesn't mean anything other than it authorizes the district to manage our budget, really. Brenda, do you have anything else you'd like to say about it?
No, it is something that happens every year, and it does allow us to, manage our budget, and i.e. manage staffing.
Yep.
If there were any adjustments that we had to make.
Great. Any question? I would take a motion.
So I'll make a motion that we approve resolution directing the administration to make recommendation reductions in programs and positions and reasons therefore.
I have a motion on the floor. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Oh.
Beth's got it.
All right. I have a first and a second. Any further discussion? This is, pending no further discussion, this is a resolution, so I will do a roll call vote. Brady Anderson.
Aye.
Kevin Campbell.
Aye.
Jessica Johnson.
Aye.
Eric Gordy.
Aye.
Beth Praska.
Aye.
Amy Edwards. Aye. The resolution passes. Next agenda item, thank you. The next agenda item is acknowledgement of contributions. It's a resolution item. Again, we look at this every single month and take a minute to pause and recognize the generosity of the community in which we live that supports our kids. There are donations on this list ranging anywhere from a donation of material items from $25 all the way up to a $15,000 donation as well. Significant. And there's a variation where the funds are being donated to, and a variation in who's supporting your district. So blows my mind every month. So
Awesome.
yeah,
That's
really
phenomenal.
a testament to, I would say, the staff of this district that create an awesome environment for our kids to learn, grow, and succeed. And then the community that rallies around them and supports that. So cool. Any questions before we do the resolution regarding any of the donations listed? All
I
right.
just think it's awesome.
All right. Great. I totally agree. All right, pending no further discussion at this point, I would accept a motion to acknowledge the contributions.
I'll make a motion to acknowledge the contributions as listed.
All right, I have a first, I have a second.
I'll second it.
I have a first and a second. Now any further discussion? Pending no further discussion, this is a resolution, so it will be a roll call. Beth Praska.
Aye.
Eric Gordy.
Aye.
Kevin Campbell.
Aye.
Brady Anderson.
Aye.
Jessica Johnson.
Aye.
Amy Edwards. Resolution passes. Thank you. All right, next is the first reading of select MSBA recommended policy revisions. I don't know, Rhonda, do you want to brief us on this? It's, it was in our pre-read, so if there's anything to highlight.
Sure, there's not much, there's not many changes, just some few language changes. So I know you had a chance to preview it, but there's really nothing glaring that I would bring your attention to as being something we need to chit-chat about.
Sounds good. Does anybody,
I say chit-chat.
yeah, you did. Does anybody have any questions after doing the first pre-read? Great. So that's the first reading. So that'll come back to us next month. So look forward to that. If you have any questions in the interim, feel free to direct those to Rhonda. All right, at this time, I think we are at the culmination of our action items for the board. If staff would like to leave, they are more than welcome to. Oh, sure, maybe just, yeah.
Oh, well, before we dismiss the staff, I do want just to thank everyone that's still here. And I'm glad, Scott, I'm glad you're here, Stacy. Because going back to last Friday, the early dismissal, it was one of those situations. Well, first of all, early dismissals happen so rarely. And I found out from this community, they couldn't think of the last time we had one. Late starts are one thing, but early dismissal, very rare. And so we didn't have our routine, but every single part of the organization stepped up. Brenda and Bobby took the lead in their buildings. They were up late the night before, that Thursday night, looking at the schedules. Brenda talked a little bit earlier about, her lunch and overlapping, and it's hard. I mean, I shouldn't say that. There's just a lot of moving parts, and we're talking about kiddos. And often what gets us through every day is the routine and the predictability of what happens next. And our kids know that it's recess time, but when we change that up for our kids, it takes the adults in the system to help guide our kids. And I really got to hand it to my colleagues, not just the principals, but the custodial staff, the secretaries, everyone just leaned in and made it work. The bus garage, I was at the DO at the end of the day. Kathy and I stayed a little bit later, made sure all of our kids got home, and then I went to the bus garage. And when we left on Friday, I'm gonna knock on wood, we didn't have not one single parent call, 0. Followed up with the two principals on this week on Monday, their buildings, 0. So again, that's the whole organization stepping up and doing what they knew had to be done to keep our kids safe, to get them home, and to really make it a seamless event for us. So kudos to the organization.
I got a few calls.
Thank you. thank you for taking the time to acknowledge the team, so.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah, again, you're welcome to stay, but don't need to. All right.
It is true.
Yeah, totally.
I didn't know that. Must have been an athlete. Must have been a wrestler.
So
I'm
our
sure we'll
next,
reschedule.
Had to be a wrestler.
yeah, so,
It did help when community had canceled their event. We were gonna struggle about that decision, and then they canceled, so that just helped.
But
Like,
it was better, because it got, yeah, I think it's, be safe.
but it was, yeah.
all right. So next, our board and superintendent updates and announcements. School board work session is February 3rd, 2020, 6:30 p.m. in the Heritage Room here. I think we have one member that will not be able to attend at this point in time, so I'm just checking in to see if there's anyone else, just to make sure we're not, I mean, not that we make decisions, but just to make sure we're not at risk of not having enough people for a conversation. Nope. All right. Next is the regular meeting of the Board of Education, which is Wednesday, February 19th, 2020 at 6:30 p.m. And we do have a work session before that one?
Do we have a work session already?
February 3rd.
It's an even month. We already have
Great,
it on
thank
the
you,
3rd.
thank you.
The extended work session.
And remember what we decided with the, this is, okay, very good.
February
Awesome.
3rd.
Good.
Full
All
work
right.
session,
Thank
then
you.
our regular.
And then we'll go into board committee updates. Who would like to go first?
I do not want to go first.
Okay,
I'll go first.
great.
Or if you want to go first? I'll go first. And are we doing our MSBA briefing
All of it,
as well?
yep.
Good.
Yep.
We're continuing with the teachers' negotiations. It's a process. That's not going to be a short one, but I think we know what we're doing. So that's been good, and it hasn't been. It's been good.
Yeah.
It's been good. And Superintendent Durand is our Superintendent Durand. Oh, Superintendent Dean is leading us on some things that I think will move us forward on some things. I think that's a good thing. I enjoyed the MSBA spot. I think the keynote on Thursday, he was great. So I thought that was really good. The two
Who was that,
sessions.
Kevin?
Huh? I don't even remember his first
Q&As.
Q&As.
I wouldn't have to struggle with it.
Q&As. The two that I went to, one was one Amy was at as well, was around what's the board's job in investigation, and the piece that I was reminded of, my takeaway was on that was as individual board members we're very weak, right, in our role. And he said you kind of have an impossible role. You don't lead staff, you don't do anything, that's all the superintendent's job. Your role is to basically show up for a board meeting and pretend that that's the only time you're meeting and do that thing. And I think now there was a different spot, unless you're going through some stuff and then the board gives some authority to different members or whatever. But it reminded me of my first couple of years on the board of just our job really is to oversee budget over that and then work through our superintendent, right? And so I'm glad that we're through the section where we go, okay, now we kind of know at least for the remainder of the school year what we're doing. So that was a good piece on me for that. The other piece that I went to was Byron's. Byron. Oh, now I'm going to forget what it was. But Byron has a like a picture of a graduate. And so in their high school, in order to graduate, you have to put together a portfolio. And at the portfolio, these are the things that you do. And you can go in different fields. They have partnerships with Mayo down there. They have partnerships with some of the legal system, like the judges will come in. They have some teaching, some different pieces. And it's not something that we can do through IB because we're doing IB, but it goes, hey, it's cool that they're kind of creating a portfolio, which happens in the IB program as well. So that I thought that was a really cool thing just to go, and we kind of see it on the standards-based piece as well. But student success is not deemed upon A, B, C, D, or F, right? That's just, there's something more to it. And what I really liked about it, I thought was creative, is how do they start to identify their strengths and gift set in that age, and look at potential spot and get experience in high school in these potential fields that they can kind of go, oh, maybe I would like this. I would not. Once I got in, I realized I don't like it. I can switch. It was a pretty cool thing. They're getting a lot of attention in the state for what they're doing there. And of course, it's not perfect, and they run into the how do we know it's successful and what do we do different things. But I think it was a really cool thing to see, just different pieces. I think what we're seeing in middle schools and under is going to eventually have to hit high schools, which the problem will be the colleges, will be the higher learning and how do they do that. But if we really want what's best for students, I think we have to look at that. So it was pretty cool. I enjoyed those pieces.
Thank you. Excellent. All right, so I'll go next then. Are you done?
Yeah.
So started off the month with Rhonda at lunch with the chamber luncheon.
Oh, nice. Why do we go to lunch?
Had a great time hearing about our volunteer fire department.
Yeah, it was.
Outstanding. And some nice things. And Ted, was it Ted? No. Who got elected as their onto their board? Is it Ted? Bob?
You mean Chuck?
Oh, Chuck Tryon, yeah. Chuck got elected onto their board, so he's continuing his work. Then, unfortunately, work precluded me from going to the Northwest Suburban, and Amy graciously was there anyway. So thank goodness. But so the MSBA workshop then, first session, went to a session called Being Proactively Reactive with Your Budget and Strategic Plan.
Nice.
Okay. A big commercial by Forecast 5.
Oh, fun. Sorry.
But the biggest takeaway from that is open enrollment is what, I mean, you're going to run programs anyway. The way you get more programs into your district is getting open enrollment, getting those numbers in. And it's how do you get back the kids that left is most important, because you lose that money. So they said, put focus on those children that left and see if we can drag them back in here somehow. You know, and they did talk about forecasting for facilities issues and different things like that. But they said they make it work. So it was a good commercial for Forecast 5. Then my second session I went to was and I'm looking for the name of it. I can't recall off the top of my head. It was basically, how do you provide metrics to your community about how your school is successful? That's what the premise of it was. It started off with, write down 5 things you're proud about your school district. So everyone wrote down 5 things on Post-it notes when we put them out on some things. And then they walked around and said, so you have to think about subjective ways maybe to measure a lot. And so not a lot of takeaways, just you could group these things that are really important to you and say, do a survey. Or so the idea was great, but not a lot of takeaway. I will say the one takeaway I got to echo off of Kevin was Will Richardson had a tweet during the time there, and I sent it to Rhonda because I thought it was kind of fun. Said, I've never seen a school mission statement along the lines of, we exist to make sure our students get the highest standardized test scores possible and get into only elite universities. Never. So tell me why again that the primary measure of success in schools is standardized tests. So, kind of going off what Kevin is saying, what's best for the whole student, how do we look at the whole thing and not just proficiency on a large-scale test. That's my thing.
Thank you. I'll give you the Northwest Suburban update when it's my turn.
Just kidding. I can go next, I'll be pretty quick. My job definitely cut my experience at MSBA short, so sorry, things kind of blew up and I proceeded forward. So, but I did get to go for a while, and I went to the session for the screening and the assessment, and my takeaway is that we have that handled in the district to the best of my knowledge of what's going on in the district. So that's my big take. I didn't learn anything new. I'm like, but hey, we're doing good. So.
All right.
Yeah.
Very good.
Who would like to
I can go.
or bring it? Okay.
A number of the sessions I attended were all helpful. I went to the MSBA legislative agenda session. The big takeaway, I think, for that is they are lobbying for how to best use the surplus budget that the state will have this year. It's $100 and some million, no, it might. I'm underestimating the excess budget or the excess that we'll get, but they're asking for $65 million in additional funding for the general education formula, an additional 1% across districts, $30.25 million for school safety, and $68.5 million, which was like roughly 20% of the total budget surplus. So given that the amount that the state spends on education is significantly more than 20%, they thought it was fair. So we'll see how things shake out. But that was helpful to know how they're lobbying for additional funding for schools. The most, I would say, helpful session, and it relates directly to a lot of the work that we want to do as a board, and I think will fall out of the work that we do from strategic planning, has to deal with marketing and communicating about your district. The presenters were the superintendent of schools from Centennial, as well as their director of marketing and communications. And what they're doing, my perception of what they're doing from a marketing and communications perspective is spot on, and what we should aspire to.
You checked out their website?
Yeah, I have, yes, and it's well organized, efficient, easy to navigate, and easy to find information. They have a number of key publications that they do, as physical and digital, and I would say all physical stuff is also digital. One of the things that I was really impressed with, and I can turn these into, but they have and so for all those listening to the recording, I apologize. This is their is it quarterly? Their newsletter. So I just got our rocket report today. This would be the equivalent of that. The key thing here, I mean, it's highly produced, right? But they actually saved $10,000 by moving to this format, this newspaper format, versus a booklet format.
Oh,
Really?
And all of you'll notice, as I'm just holding it up, the articles are short snippets that people consume in chunks. They are not articles that people are expected to read. So super short, headline level. They get extremely good feedback on this particular piece, and it saved them a ton of money. I mean, $10,000. They're a much larger district than us, so keep that in mind. But they do serve property poor communities. So they're similar to us in that regard, but they serve 5 or 6 communities, and they're much larger in number. They essentially, through their marketing and communications initiative, they've got metrics over the past 7 years is when they started doing this. So they come back each year, evidently, and present this information. Their open enrollment has grown significantly. And the number of students leaving the district has shrunk significantly over the past 7 years because of the marketing and communications effort. So I know I've been beating this drum for a long time. This is one change we should make, period. The second one is, this is just the one pager about the district that they do. I'm not sure what they use it for, but evidently every district has one. They have had a number of levies over the past few years. They are extremely transparent and forthcoming about their levies. This is a publication about their last one that had two, both of which passed, one of which was very, very large. increasing the general ed revenue by $650 per pupil, so that was their per pupil, and then the building bond, $22.2 million building bond. Both passed. So that's important. And then they do a annual report of the schools that gets sent out to all families. It summarizes and highlights things like 631 students enrolled, 551 students took 756 AP exams. You know, so it's not just test scores, but it tells a narrative. And I think Bobby would appreciate that, right? Instead of just saying, you know, if you go to the MDE site and look at test scores for our district, it does not tell the narrative of how much students are really learning and how much our district is improving from a teaching and learning perspective. Take control of the narrative. Push out an annual report. Simplify your newsletters and how you communicate. The other key point that they were making is they're constantly surveying their stakeholders. I know we were just talking earlier in our work session about how are we going to keep engaging people. They don't even ask. They just survey people. They just do it. So it's something that we have to do. And another cute thing they do is they send out onesies to all of the new families with, you know, start building Centennial Pride from the get-go. Now that's a cute little add-on, right?
Not single.
But
they used to.
So at any rate,
Can I ask you a question just about that?
please, yes.
Do you know their staff and what they spend on a budget?
They didn't give specifics on the budget. I've asked Rhonda to reach out to Brian, their superintendent, via email. So this is, I think it's something that we really need to look seriously at as a fallout of the strategic planning, because that was another key message in the presentation. Everything needs to be aligned to the strategic plan, right?
Do they have a full? Do they have?
They do have a full-time director of marketing and communications there. That position was there prior to the new superintendent starting there. However, he implemented a similar thing at his previous school district, which was Waseca, prior to without that role. So he said it's really the staff commitment. You know, I think what was put together for the IB program, the handout, that's a good example of what staff are willing to do here. This is certainly at a different and much more organized level. You could tell that Brian, the superintendent, was very involved with the marketing and communication person in developing the plan and rolling it out.
Area for him.
Yeah, I think so, because he did it in Waseca, and then he came to Centennial, and they happened to have that role already in place. I asked the question, how is this role funded, and what is the public perception? And they basically said, it's funded through open enrollment. It's funded through open enrollment. So,
Can I ask a
Go ahead.
and it has had a significant ROI.
That's
Nice.
pretty cool.
One quick question, that try opening thing, does that just go to in like district people, or does it like do they send it out?
Goes
It's
to
more-
their tax base, I think.
So if you look at, you know, the address, it doesn't look like it's one of those massive drops.
I think it goes to every resident in the district, though.
It does, yes.
Yeah,
It goes to
yeah,
all taxpayers.
yeah.
Yep. So, that's this one. I'm looking at the wrong one.
Yeah.
So it would be, I guess, a similar approach to what we're currently doing with the Rocket Report. Nothing's translated to other languages. I think the important thing that's where I think they can get better. But again, the perception of that school district over the past 7 years, according to the superintendent, right, has changed dramatically. And I would agree. I have close friends that are members of this district, and they're very proud to be members of this district, and they should be. So
I like the idea of sending a onesie to the new baby.
it's a cute add-on. I want to start with the other ones. I want to start with our website first.
Yeah.
Rhonda.
Well, just to follow up to that, because we'll need to talk about when you want us to maybe bring forward a possible plan.
Great.
I don't know if you want to align that with our strategic plan or have it be a part of that, but Kathy and I, mostly Kathy, has continued to gather data, and one of the things that, yes, absolutely, one of the things that we know that we've done in the past is some of the things that you have in your hand, Brady, and from my understanding, over the course of the years of having to become very lean, we have lost some of those pieces. And so part of what we'll need to do is maybe just revive some of those pieces, 21st century-ize them. But we've done some things in the past that are similar. It's just they've been phased out because we're in a place that we had to get lean. And so, but we can talk about it when you want us to bring that forward, because we continue to talk.
Great.
She's probably tired of me talking to her about it.
One of the key things that they discussed was that they looked at what they were currently doing, and they got rid of a bunch of stuff.
Yep.
And they're spending less on their mailers than they were before.
Agreed.
So
Agreed.
I think that we do the same exercise.
Yeah,
So what do we
totally.
stop doing? What do we start doing? And evidently that's an exercise we go through in the strategic planning process. So.
Totally.
Great.
So what's it?
Everybody wants to talk about it?
Brian Dietz is a good guy.
Good. Jessica?
All right.
To that one.
When I got there Thursday, of course, traffic was really fun to try to get there by 8 o'clock. So I got in there for an 8 o'clock session. I got in there a little late, but it was critical choices in the superintendent contract, what should be in and what should be out. And so I got that and got information for both of these two to look over. So we have that. Then I have them folded over. The John Quinones, I think, was awesome. Brady got to sit next to me while I'm wiping tears through the whole thing. That's who I am, of course.
Did you wipe Brady's as well?
Right, I'm sure. No, yeah, I'm sure he's laughing next to me while I'm like, but I'm looking around, other people are too, so whatever.
Yeah, there was multiple criers. It's all right.
I thought it was great. It was eye-opening, and it was something to just really, just being an educator, to just be so aware. Anyways, after lunch, I did try to go to Roundtable and walked away. I can't do those. It's too loud in there. I can't
hear.
And I made that very clear in my evaluation of it. So hopefully that will change in future years that they get rid of that. But then I went to teacher turnover, why it matters and what we can do about it. I thought it was very valuable. Some of the big things was just working environment for teachers, and I have some stuff on that. It was really good. After that, I stopped in at one workshop, just got some information left, and then I went to, because I thought, I need to go to this. It was female superintendent perceptions of challenges in seeking and serving in public schools. And I went to that, and I was very disappointed. I was very disappointed. They did not, to me, they didn't give us valuable. I got a couple of things. I do have a couple of notes that were valuable, but it really turned into playing a victim card basically through the whole thing. I was sitting next to another board member for another district, and comments multiple times that, females don't get hired because of this. There's always one female, the token female that gets interviewed, and 4 other males, and it was just this continuous. It just felt very. And he was like, "We have a board of 6 males, and we hired a female superintendent." Like, he's like, "How does that even matter?" And it was really hard, the direction they chose to go down, and some comments that were made that made me go, "Oh, I'm gonna keep that name on my list," because it just went in such a wrong direction that I ended up walking out. I was sad about it. I was just disappointed because I was really looking forward to how we as a board can make sure we support a female superintendent. So I was just very disappointed in the session. So it was a bummer, but I got up in the morning and I did drive down to Minneapolis, and I got there for a 9:15 session, and I went to the tiered licensure renewal, cultural competency training, and more professional educator licensing and standards boards, PELSB updates, and was so happy I went to that. Talked about the cultural competency and that districts decide upon how many hours that are going to be required. Talked about who we can contact at Pelsby with certain questions. The different tier system, and so what happened to us this last year in tech ed, we had to post, and you don't have to hire the person with the tier 3 or tier 4 license, but you really have to prove how they are not a qualified candidate, and it's extremely hard to do. And so you really do, it's important because you could have a brand new teacher and say, well, this tier 1 has so much more experience and we want them, and this is a new teacher, but they should get that chance. They went to school, they've done the education, they need that chance to get in the classroom, and that's important. And so I can see why they have those requirements, but they find that in tech ed, there's really some struggles because you do have some very competent, amazing professionals that are coming into the classroom to teach our kids that it's really hard to see them go because they're so valuable. And so Pelsby is still working very hard with that to see if there's any way in certain areas, business, ag, tech ed, that they
Project
can
Lead the Way.
That was a huge one, Project Lead the Way, to get them into the tier 2 where you don't have to repost to the public. So it was just, great conversation, great questions. I have a few pages of notes there. Following that, I did go to listen to the governor speak, and a big portion of his speech was about what C has been fighting for, and it's about equalizing funding and how he's very much behind that and is going to do what he can to push that equalization of funding. Very well spoken person. I was just kind of awed at that. And then I listened to Alan November speak. What a cool perspective, you guys. This is something that everybody in here would have really enjoyed hearing. He talked about our classrooms haven't changed in the past 30 years. They haven't changed. Yep, kids have screens in front of them, but instead of writing the papers, they're typing their papers. It hasn't changed.
Since the last industrial revolution.
And he said, learning needs to change. So he goes, look up this app, and I actually put it on my phone, and it's called Wolfram Alpha. You can a kid can type in any calculus problem. It lays it out instantly, lays it out step by step, how to solve it, and there's the answer. And so his take on that was, why don't we change from that? Because they have this available to them, instead of feeding them how to solve these problems, why are we solving these problems? And applying our education in a different way rather than feeding information to kids, having them learn the why and working in collaborative groups. And it was such a great presentation. He was a really interesting guy. I did buy his book because I want to read it to see if it's, I think of our IB program and what IB is about, and I felt like there's a connection there with it, and that this might be something that might be really valuable for our teachers at our high school to be, and all of our teachers, but really our teachers at the high school to be looking at. But I want to read through it first, just so I'm not But it was really cool. It was a nice. I was happy I went down there. And as I was driving home, Rhonda, it's about 10 to 1. I'm coming into Hanover, and I'm like, no snowflakes yet. What all those superintendents are feeling? I know they were writing what they did, but I wonder how they're, nervous, right? And as I pull in my driveway at 1, snow starts falling. My kids pull in about 5 minutes later, and at 2 o'clock I had to drive my daughter to Delano, and I was so thankful that our babies, our babies aren't on the roads.
Yeah, because it got nasty.
It was amazing. I went into my classroom in Delano, and the principal was still in there, and popped in, and I said, in your memory, because he's been in education longer than me, I said, do you ever recall a 2-hour early dismissal being called a day early? And he's like, never. And he's like, this was amazing. You gave us so much time to plan ahead. We still got valuable education happening in the classroom, but we got our kids home safe and sound before the snow hit. And as I came home, the split tier school system was like flashing lights. Oh wait, a bus at 3:00 for Buffalo. And I was like, I just sat there, I'm so thankful that we don't have that system, because all those high school kids were out on the roads at that time. And so I was just so thankful that our superintendents put their heads together and came up with an awesome plan, because our kids got home safe.
Yes.
And it's like they were spot on.
I
Right?
know.
Like,
It was.
My wife's a teacher in Dallas, she goes, I brought my kids out, I walked back in the building thinking this is crazy, and it started snowing.
Yes.
It was pretty cool.
Yeah. Oh, that was.
That's pretty cool.
So, kudos to the collaborative work of our superintendents.
Yes.
Yeah.
That was
I mean, and we were
incredible.
all there, so
that was
we
the
were
best
able to
part.
chat like in real time.
How cool
and
was
you know
that?
what, Myzetta went first. It was like really Chase.
I'm not done yet. Oh, sorry. I just saw these things. So
don't forget.
I went through the vendors when I had time, and sometimes you go on with blinders because you just want to look for certain things. I was looking for yearbook stuff and photo and everything, and this gentleman, this David Swan, jumps out and he's like, "Hey, have you?" And he starts talking to me about the Bright Schools project, and I don't know, I'm kind of sold on it, and I think we've been approached, our district's been approached on it, but we have a 5-year plan, and I get that. But when I look at this here, this is what our current costs are for our electric bill. Up here is equipment and maintenance. They come in, they do all the work when the kids aren't here. They replace all the fixtures, everything. We have a financing plan right here. This is our electric bill, the financing plan, and that green is the monthly savings. And there are districts that are saving, bigger districts that are saving like $28,000 a month. And it's just, to me, it's something that I feel, rather than saying we have a 5-year plan, that if we're able to start saving money, it pays for itself before that 5-year plan. Because of grants and stuff, we're able to do this without upfront costs. It's financed, and we're still saving money while paying for those changes that would happen. So I thought that was something that could really benefit our district financially. The Minnesota Ag Ed Advocates is stopped by there, and there's some grants and everything that we can look at for our programs at our school, which I thought was wonderful. So I have a little bit on that. I can't find, that's why I was digging in my bag, I can't find the yearbook one that we went to. It's probably on my table.
Okay.
So there was a yearbook we went to for a yearbook.
Okay.
Like
they
this.
take pictures too.
Yes, but, okay, their yearbook, $30 for one that was this big.
Oh.
He says a lot of schools do it as a fundraiser, because you can just put on a little more, but it's a fundraiser. The ones for the elementary school were like $8.
Yeah.
Cute.
And they were really nice, very, very, very well done.
Yeah.
So, and it's a family-owned
Yes.
business. It isn't a,
Johnston's.
I will,
Not Chelsea.
or Life Touch,
It
or
was
Yeah, we gotta get
Wall.
think of something different.
Because he said, I asked
Doesn't
about the
matter.
Whatever.
pictures, and he said, yes, they can do the pictures too.
Yes, they can do
I mean, that
school
would
pictures
be
too.
different, but I just thought, you're cutting the cost in half, and honestly, you guys, I have older kids, those things, they look at them the year they graduate, and then every 5 years after that only, like, they are a colossal waste of money. But you have to buy them for your kids because you don't wanna be with them. So if we could save our families half, I just think, why
They were really
And they were
nice
so nice.
quality, like super nice quality books.
So,
And that's why you got the director's award.
Yeah, Here's one for you on food service. Yes, to give you. Board book has upgraded. I don't know if it's anything we want to look at. And then I haven't looked at this one. I just grabbed it, but it was Your Future in the Trades Begins Here.
Oh, cool.
So I was gonna look into this a little bit more, and I'll share that.
High school counselor has that.
Sure. Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. That was a. Ooh.
And that's
That
why
was-
she's
Sorry.
award.
I know. Very productive.
Yeah.
2 days there. Day and a half.
Hey, I had to write plans for a sub for 2 days.
Yeah. Nice.
Better make it worth it.
Cool. So I'll just give my updates really quick. Try to keep them fast. So Northwest Suburban, the only reason I had to attend that is because I needed to preside over the beginning of the meeting to then, because it was our organizational meeting. And I was a vice chair last year, so I had to serve as the chair to kick off the meeting to then do the elections for the people. Yeah. And then I had to stay for it to have a full quorum because, you know, Eric wasn't there. So it worked out just fine. But we went over the, refresh of the strategic plan. We usually do a mid-year review of that and just really make sure everybody's on point with the budgets for all of the grants and things like that, and reviewed our audit report. So those are the highlights, and you'll have all that in your
Got 'em
packet.
already.
So I'm sure you did. Yeah, and they're
Read them already.
Yep, good. So, went to AMSD in January as well. In your folder, thanks Kathy for putting this in everybody's folder, but it's the legislative platform for AMSD. So we just picked up a handful of those so that you guys would all have that. But the big ones are stabilizing education funding and equity and, those sort of things. So it's nice that C and AMSD are somewhat aligned. And then, of course, reducing mandates, enhancing local control, those sort of things, which is good. The other thing that was really cool at that meeting is we had a guest presenter, and they were from the Minnesota Department of Public Health and the Twin Cities Medical Society, and the conversation was about vaping. Right. And it was great because
It was really good.
It was really good. And, they were there really to talk about policy and, those sort of things, and, where local government might say, oh, we're not going to sell electronic or e-cigarettes or vaping devices or whatever in our community, or, at the federal level, they're making some choices and decisions about what can and cannot be sold and all of those sort of things. But really the conversation got around, yeah, that's good, and the policies that are being put in place are not enough. One, they'd love to have stricter, more aggressive policies, but also the conversation really dovetailed into more of a conversation around, kids are attracted to those things for a reason. Certainly vaping has an access ability, that might feel different than other things, and you can do it in the schools. I mean, Rhonda brought in the devices, we all know what they look like, so it's easier to hide even in the school setting. So it becomes a different type of a problem for a school district than other substances, and the root cause and the reason is still the same. So it really became a conversation around how do we make sure that we know our kids, understand, all of the ins and outs of the kids, help manage stress, partner with our kids in that way. And so I did take that opportunity to, in front of the whole room, introduce Rhonda, and just, I think
And
really.
they handed me the mic.
I did. Well, I said a couple things, and I'm like,
got
Rhonda,
things
you
to
can
say
talk
on
now.
this, so.
But really, I think my point in highlighting what our district has done is, Rhonda in her interim principalship, and I think her first board meeting came with a bucket full of vaping devices,
That was awesome.
stood at the podium and was like, hey, you guys, like, did you know this? This is what's going on. And I think, what I shared as a board member that was very refreshing, to have an administrator bring us into, hey, this is something that's going on, and then as a board, it began to normalize a conversation, right? So like, we could have
That should be.
conversations about vaping. We could, you know, as a board member, I could go and be like, hey, friends, you should go to the thing that we're hosting. Like, it's a big deal. And, oh, did you know that? You know, so I could become my own little public health agent. But then at a board level, we had conversations about the problem, right? And really, I feel like that may have even empowered, I hope, it empowered our leadership and our teachers to have, and our, you know, support staff and counselors, everybody to feel really empowered, like, hey, we're gonna talk about this, and we're gonna put up the signs, and we're gonna do it in our own way that makes sense to the high school kids here, but we're not gonna not talk about it. And so that was, I just turned it over to Rhonda at that point in time to just really talk about her philosophy and how, you know, she really shared that with the board. And because it's not a strict policy thing, it's not a you can't do this, it's a, hey, create awareness and let's get to know what's going on with their kids. So anyway, so that was my big takeaway, and then I got to say how cool Rhonda was when she brought that forward to the board. And I did challenge every board in that room, if they haven't had a conversation about it, to have a conversation about it. So there's that. Kevin and I did a little board prep with Rhonda, so hopefully this agenda has moved along nicely, and hopefully you enjoyed the very quick work session at the beginning and all of that.
Awesome.
So
It worked great.
good. So we'll keep learning as we go and refine it as we need to, but sweet.
It's not 10 o'clock.
It's not 10 o'clock. That's why I'm talking really fast, because I want to just quick get through these.
She's going for 9.
I was going through for 8:30 earlier, and then I'm like,
Then just start.
I know, I'm like, not happening. So then negotiations, I will just echo what Kevin said, I'm not going to add anything more to that. I did attend MSBA, really appreciated the first speaker. I cried as well. So it was good we weren't sitting next to each other, Jess. But for my breakout sessions, I attended 2 actually that were somewhat similar. One was investigating and responding to misconduct, and then the other was really more focused on the school board responsibility related to employee and student investigations. So the first takeaway from the first one was it's really important to structure. One, I agree with what Kevin said on board level, not, you know, necessarily our work, but part of our work is to make sure that our district has the ability to call for a third-party investigation when it needs to. And there are certain instances where it makes the most sense to have somebody come in and help support, you know, an allegation of misconduct or whatever, to have that third-party investigation. So they talked a bit about that. They talked a bit about, you know, investigations can happen by, you know, school district administrators can do it too, and best practices for those sort of things. So, and then as a board, many times we don't even know that they're happening, and that's totally normal.
Purposeful.
And that's purposeful, right? Because it's not water cooler talk, and as Kevin said, it's when things reach a board level, we'll know because they'll be brought to us appropriately in the right setting. But most of the things really are handled internally as they should be. And so I appreciated that, and I think it keeps a nice firewall too, right, between what we need to help and govern and support, and what really is management responsibility. So then that went into another conversation around the school board's roles and responsibilities and employee and student involvement and investigations, and that kind of also echoed the first conversation. The first conversation was really more about the technical side of the investigation. The second was really encouraging people to stay at the altitude that they should. And there was a really interactive conversation because some of the districts, you know, it's personal because they got kids in the district and all of that. So they talked a lot about strategies for like, gosh, when, you know, Susie comes over and says, hey, I heard this happened. And if you know it or don't know it, it doesn't matter. But they kind of talked through some strategies for, you know, how to deflect and how, you know, it's really not anything that the board should or would be either involved in or talking about. So anyway.
You sparked something in my head. Can I just speak on that?
Yeah.
I'll go really short. One of the things that I think that was echoed is the when someone comes in and like maybe there's a possible expulsion. Eventually, if that gets further, that comes to us, and by us being aware of it on the front end and having thoughts, then we're really ruling ourselves out on being that authority on the third party spot. So just that.
Oh, does that make sense what he said? So like if we knew about some of the details about something like that would come to the board to govern over, right? Because that could be like a mini hearing or whatever,
Yeah.
where they would, you know, be
Because we
able
have
to
to make that
challenge. We have to
decision.
ultimately make the decision. Yeah, if we knew about the data ahead of time.
Or participate in an investigation.
Then we might have to recuse ourselves, or it would be, it would taint because we wouldn't be getting the information fresh, and members of the board may have different levels of information, which again is not the right thing to do too. So, yeah, so it's good, and I think they also reinforce that, you know, members of the community think that when you're on the board, you know all of the inner workings of the school, and the reality is that you don't, and we shouldn't. And so that was another thing that I think some of the board members just talked about when they were in the room of like, yeah, it's a tough spot to be, you know? But anyway, so those were good. Those are my updates, I think. Rhonda?
My last one? Did
Yeah.
everyone go?
Yeah, everybody went.
Okay,
Yeah.
I will make this brief. Safe routes to school, we're expecting a draft infrastructure, with issues and opportunities map. They're calling it an issues and opportunities map.
Cool.
But that should be ready next week.
Oh.
That's awesome.
So
Cool.
we'll let you know next steps on that. Continuing to work with our crisis management planning team. We're meeting again tomorrow, and of course that's a district, our DAT team primarily, which includes Barb with buses. She comes over. I mean, it's a pretty. We have all representatives on this crisis committee: busing, maintenance, the principals, Kathy, our liaisons. Leander comes over,
District nurse.
the nurse. So all of those folks who we would have to activate if we found ourselves in a crisis. So we're continuing to work on that. Calendar committee has met one time. We were high-fiving as we left the room, so far so good. So far, so good on the calendar committee. I know at the high school today, our representative shared with staff some possibilities. I know the other two buildings are doing the same. We're gonna meet next week for the second time to bring back possible scenarios in terms of the calendar, and so we'll end up bringing that to the board hopefully next month
Nice.
Awesome.
Okay,
for a first read,
cool.
and then maybe act on it the second, in March then.
Nice.
And that's if we stay with our timeline, because we would be meeting the third time, like right before the board packets are due. So we'll have to time that out a little bit. You already spoke about the AMSD board meeting. Really appreciated the presentations the last couple of months. They've been really good. Attended the Northwest Suburban Superintendent's meeting. Love going to those meetings. First of all, it's just a different group of superintendents. So, and then they're part of the magnet school, part of Northwest Suburban, so just different perspective. Yes, I did an emotional poverty workshop at Reams on Monday, which was very intimidating. I mean, you're sitting there with a bunch of elementary teachers, 50, they're intimidating. Those are people who can look at a blank bulletin board and create an interactive, an interactive board in 30 minutes. High school people look at it like, oh, got a couple of stickers.
Different gift sets.
But no, I haven't gotten all the feedback yet, but it was engaging, and I hope that they took something away from that. Interviewed, I shared about the principalship, so I won't go back to that. But I think the last thing is hired a media specialist. We've been out without a K-12 media specialist now for
October.
3 months. Her name is Caitlin Jack. That's her married name. Her maiden name was Caitlin Hohenstein. Hohenstein. She's a 2015 grad.
Oh, wow.
She was one of our rock stars. Took all of our CIS offerings. She's actually in school right now,
she was getting a master's in media sciences. And she saw the position. We've been talking with Caitlin for probably the whole month of December about this position because she was working on her master's in media sciences. She wants to come here. She's excited about coming here to the point that she's actually changed her major now. And she has switched it through winter break. She worked with the school. So now she's in a teacher program to be a media specialist. Because of her work with her master's degree, she actually went to Pellsby and was able to get a tier 2 license right out of the chute.
That's awesome.
And she's starting tomorrow.
Great,
Oh,
exciting.
good.
The model will be a little bit different from our previous media specialists. We are kind of re-looking at her work day, or her work week, I should say. So she's going to spend 3 days here at the high school because of the lift that we have here in our media center, and then spend 1 day. The monies that was, what am I thinking? The gala.
Ed Foundation.
The Ed Foundation, thank you. We have not done anything with that. We raised that night, I want to say in excess of about $20,000, and we've been kind of holding that because we wanted the media specialists on board so they can help with designing the space, looking at the furniture, and really be a part of that redesign process. So now that she starts tomorrow, we'll be able to look at that, so I think we might be fully staffed.
Wow.
It's only almost February, but
Did you find a special
Great.
ed teacher at the elementary?
yes.
Okay.
It's been good tonight.
Yeah.
Yes.
I thought I saw it in there. I just want to double check if my memory is correct.
Yep.
Okay.
And Brenda's just thrilled with her,
Good, great.
so
Cool,
exciting.
thank you.
So that was it,
Great
yeah.
updates. Yeah. So our last agenda item is just to sign recognition. So, yearbook artwork.
Can I do Chance Langdon?
Of course you can.
He's the artwork, one of the artworks.
Oh, for high school?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
I can do the elementary one.
Okay.
I'll do Everett.
All right.
I sent him a text already, but I'll send him.
Take the other one too.
I'll do Kaylee as well.
There you go. Isn't she your daughter's buddy?
Both of them are, yeah. They're at my house all the time.
All right.
Well, there you go.
They're not even in here.
Oh.
When did we
Oh,
get
yeah, that was a different
Who's
update.
not in
Athletic
here?
update.
That
The
was just.
AAA, that was
Oh,
that was
hold on.
Pratt's deal. I bet you it'll be in
Alright,
next week
So
or
you
next
have
month.
elementary.
Yep, I got the
Okay.
elementary.
I'm
Spelling.
still gonna
So
do
I've
it.
Oh,
got
because he's
Two
going,
for
he's
spelling
going on
bee.
to the next round.
2 for spelling bee.
Still deserves a
I think so too. What's up with that Pratt dude?
Were you doing gymnastics? What?
I need 2 for the spelling bee.
What is this for?
2 for gymnastics.
2 for gymnastics?
You
Okay.
can
Okay,
do
Eric, are
mine.
you doing gymnastics?
I guess so.
Okay.
I just said yes.
All right, and Jessica, you're doing high school art.
Well, I said I do Chance. There, Taylor Andres. I don't know if anybody wanted that one in particular because Taylor's pretty special, but I
We're
didn't
getting
want to.
close.
Can you do both?
Yeah, sure.
Awesome. And then can you do spelling bee?
I can. I'd
Okay.
love to.
All right.
Yes.
All right.
Wait,
Who is our
you're
spelling bee?
doing recognition for not even recognition? Come now.
Why don't you do one spelling bee and you'll do one spelling
Yeah,
bee?
I got the 7th grader.
All right. So we are at the end of our meeting. With that, I would take a motion to adjourn.
I'll make the motion to adjourn.
Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any further discussion?
Looks like Kevin wants to discuss.
Really want to just.
Okay, pending no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? All right, meeting adjourned.